Hello, Wellspring. So we're going to be continuing on with our readings. Today, in this video, we're going to tackle June 29th and then today's video, June 30th, together in one video. We are moving into the book of Daniel. Daniel is a really interesting book it opens up with a number of chapters that are stories about Daniel and his friends being Babylonian captives and how God uses them, how they maintain a commitment to holiness and purity, how they're pursuing God, and how God meets them in that space, how God watches over them and protects them, and how God leads them, and how their faith is strong in spite of the fact that their circumstances are difficult, and even more than difficult, sometimes literally unbearable to the point where they're threatened, their lives are threatened, and God sustains them and watches over them. Then Daniel kind of moves into this space where there's some prophetic word that that we see that gets fulfilled about the destruction of Jerusalem, about these different world powers that will rise and fall. And then there's also promise of the Messiah coming, the Son of Man, one who will come and sit down at the right hand of God and will deliver the people of Israel, will deliver God's people, will make a way for the nations to be brought into God's care and into God's focus and into his family. And so while we're not going to quite get into all the prophetic stuff from Daniel, through our readings this year, we are going to see several of the key stories in Daniel. And I guess we will get into a little bit of it in Daniel chapter 9 when we get to the end of that. But for today, we're going to read Daniel chapters 1 and 2 and just hear about Daniel being taken prisoner as an exile, as part of the exiles. He is a prisoner of war and what happens to him and to his friends. So I'll be reading from the NIV, and let's dig into it. This is Daniel chapter 1, and then I will read Daniel chapter 2. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia, and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter into the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, "I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men, your age? The king would then have my head because of you." Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So he agreed and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the 1st year of King Cyrus. Chapter 2. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means. Then the astrologers answered the king, May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it. The king replied to the astrologers, This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your house turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me. Once more they replied, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it. Then the king answered, I am certain that you are trying to gain time because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping that the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me. The astrologers answered the king, There is no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans. This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel, his friend, and his friends to put them to death. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, Why did the king issue such a harsh decree? Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for time, so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from God, from the God of heaven, concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a dream. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. The king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that pass through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. As your majesty the king was lying there, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation and you may understand what went through your mind. Your majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chests and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken into pieces and became like chaff on the threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind, and the beasts of the field, and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. After you, another kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things into pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom, yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with the baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold into pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and its interpretation trustworthy. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all of its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. So here in these first two chapters of Daniel, we see this incredible commitment by these young men to say, you know what? I know that you want us to eat this certain food, and I know you want us to go a certain way and be trained in the ways of the Babylonian wise men, but we can't defile ourselves by eating this food. We will eat only vegetables and drink only water, because they wanted to maintain the covenant commitment from the Torah, right? From the first 5 books of the Bible, the law of Moses to only eat certain foods. And not to defile themselves with foods they weren't supposed to eat according to God's law. And this gets put to the test right away, right? Like the guy who's in charge of eating is like, I can't have you looking weak. But God shows up, and after 10 days of testing, Daniel and his friends, Mishael, Azariah, my goodness, what's the third one's name in Hebrew? I always say them in Babylonian, but I feel like we should say their names in Hebrew. Let's slip in my mind. Anyways, Hananiah, that's it. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So Daniel and his 3 friends, they eat the food that God has prescribed, or that they feel like God has called them to, and they show up stronger. And then as they study, they end up being given wisdom by God, and God opens up their minds and hearts. And it positions them to be in a space where when the king calls them in for service, the king recognizes, wow, these 4 Hebrews, there's something special about them. And what's special about them is that they put God first. They are pursuing God. And God is demonstrating his wisdom and his strength and his might, and how it's greater than the wisdom and strength and might of Babylon. It's greater than the food that Babylon has to offer. It's greater than the wisdom Babylon has to offer. God is more powerful than all of that stuff, and we see that come to fruition. And the king, Nebuchadnezzar, doesn't even realize why it is, but he finds these 4 young men, Daniel, Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael, all in a space where they are wiser, smarter, stronger, better looking, like all of that stuff. It's all coming to fruition because they are obeying God. And then we see this story of King Nebuchadnezzar presenting this dream and saying, I'm not going to tell you the dream. You got to tell me the dream and interpret it. And Daniel finds himself in a space where he is standing up for all of the astrologers, enchanters, wise men of Babylon who are going to be killed because they can't interpret the dream, but they can't interpret the dream because they haven't heard it. And he steps up and he steps out in boldness and he says, my God is capable. No human being can interpret this dream or give you this mystery, but God can do it. And he takes some time to pray, and he goes back and he prays with his friends, and God gives him the vision and the interpretation, and he reveals it to Nebuchadnezzar, and it positions Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah all in spaces where they have authority in Babylon, and God is positioning them to be in a space of leadership, even though they're exiles and prisoners of war. And so we see God's faithfulness being poured out on them. We see God revealing wisdom and power and might, even in the midst of exile, even in the midst of the suffering, for these four men from Israel who are choosing to honor God in all situations, who will not defile themselves, who won't bend their integrity. And it's just amazing to watch God's hand demonstrate strength even in our weakness. You would think in that situation they're eating, quote unquote, not as good of food, and they are prisoners of war, and they are Hebrews, so they would be detested and looked down on. And all of that's going on, and all of those things remain true, but yet God is showing his faithfulness. God is showing his strength through Daniel and through his friends. That can be true for you and I. If we press into the Lord, if we walk with integrity, if we pursue his righteousness, if we trust in his word, we spend time in prayer like Daniel, we spend time digging in and looking for wisdom and pursuing it like the wisdom literature instructed us, God will give it. God will open up our eyes. God will open up our ears. He will make our minds able to know and possess his wisdom, not because we're great, but because he can be great in our weakness. And then that manifests itself in fruit that benefits the people around us. All those enchanters and astrologers that were going to be killed, all of the Babylonian wise men were going to be killed, were not killed because Daniel and Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael were serving God and maintaining faithfulness, and God delivered them, and other people got blessing out of that. That can be true for you. That can be true for your family. Press into the wisdom of God. Allow God to lead you. God bless you, Wellspring. This one got a little long, but you have a great day.